On November 6, 2016, YouTube user HBomberGuy uploaded an 86-minute video titled Bloodborne is Genius and Here's Why. The video talks about many of Bloodborne's aspects, but the main thesis of the video is how games introduce mechanics and how those introductions can influence the way a player will interact with those mechanics. He coined the term play conditioning to describe this and mentioned how great games with poor play conditioning can be considered bad games by players who were taught to play it wrong. Just to be clear, I've completely butchered the explanation of play conditioning here, and I highly recommend that you go and watch Bloodborne is Genius and Here's Why, because it's a very interesting video, and I will be applying HBomberGuy's lens onto a different game in this video. 2 months prior, a game called Mafia 3 hit the market, a game that came out to middling reviews for being tedious and repetitive, and has somewhat left the public consciousness since then. Let me just get this out of the way from the start. I love Mafia 3. I have all the achievements for it, and it's a game I would still like to return to someday. However, in my first attempt at getting into it, this could not have been further from the truth. The first time I played Mafia 3, I only captured 1 of 10 districts before dropping the game. Normally, when I drop a game due to boredom, I do so for good, but there was something about Mafia 3 that brought me back to it some months later. In my second attempt, I only got 2 districts in before boredom swiftly set in again. I put it down and didn't pick it back up. At least for a few months. I once more felt like giving Mafia 3 another go, and this was so unlike me that I promised myself that this would be the game's last chance. So I installed it, booted it up, and was swiftly getting bored again. But then something happened. A switch flipped in my brain and I had a revelation. This time I didn't put the game down until I had played through it twice and attained the Platinum Trophy. What happened is that I discovered a new approach to playing Mafia 3 that I actually enjoyed. In all my previous attempts, I approached every encounter with a stealth mindset, looking for openings to take enemies out without being caught by others and spending a lot of time waiting behind cover to observe walking patterns. I would eventually, inevitably, fail at this approach and get into a great big shootout with anyone who was left. In my third playthrough, I had an epiphany. The gunplay in this game was pretty fun, so when I arrived at the next encounter, I just went in guns blazing. And it was amazing. I felt like I was playing one of those over-the-top action movies, and at long last, I was having fun. But let's take a step back. Why did this approach to Mafia 3 take me so long to figure out? The game is generally designed to accept any playstyle, so why was I so insistent on using stealth when it was the less fun experience? Well, remember how I mentioned play conditioning at the beginning of this video? The game taught and encouraged me to play in a way that wasn't fun. Let's take a look at the game's tutorial. The first moment in which you are truly free to do as you please is your assault on the Haitians' base of operations. The first half of this assault is stealth-based, with the game explicitly instructing you on how to go unnoticed. There's nothing stopping you from taking a more aggressive approach, but a new player will typically do what the game asks of them. The second half of the assault is a big shootout where you make your way to the exit, taking down anyone in your way. Again, the game's open nature allows you to go back into stealth if you really want to, but you are being encouraged to shoot your way out of this situation. This tutorial instills an attitude in players. You should always start an encounter with stealth, and gunplay should be a last resort. Now, I don't think that the developers wanted to instill this idea into the players, but this first base is mechanically similar to many others you fight in throughout the game, and you've clearly been told here that you should use stealth for as long as you can and use your weapons only when you don't have any other choice. After the prologue is over, you get another base assault mission against the Dixie Mafia. This part of the game is completely open-ended. You're not encouraged to approach it in any particular way. At least, I'm sure that's what the developers intended, but that's not really what happens. The base itself is situated in a public venue that is full of civilians. It has plenty of cluttered corridors to take cover in and windows to more open areas for the purpose of recon. You are here to rescue people, and the enemies are usually spaced far apart so that they can be picked off one by one. Nothing about this situation encourages a frontal assault, but a lot of it encourages a stealthy approach. I feel like I should mention here that you don't have to be stealthy in this mission. You can easily barge in and shoot every goon in the building. Civilians will flee, and the people you're here to rescue will be rescued so long as you remember to unlock the doors for them. But again, a new player will typically do what a game says they should, even if the message is unintentional or implicit. This first base further enforces the message that stealth is best, and using your firearms should only happen as a last resort. This further enforces the less fun way of playing the game. Remember when I mentioned at the start of the video that Mafia 3 came out to middling reviews for being tedious? Well, that's exactly how I felt about this game the first couple of times I tried to play it. Stealth in this game isn't fun. It involves a lot of waiting and observing and moving around slowly, and doing this over and over again for every single encounter is definitely tedious. Going with an action approach doesn't make the game any less repetitive, but it does make the repetitious tasks more fun. You'd think that more people would catch on to this, but the game itself has encouraged a stealthy playstyle through the way it introduced the mechanics and the circumstances around its earlier missions. It's the game's fault that so many people played it the boring way. The only way I learnt the fun approach was by forcing myself to unlearn the attitude that Mafia 3 had instilled in me. So how could Hangar 13 have fixed this? Honestly, my first suggestion would be foregoing stealth altogether. The play it your way approach to game design seems good on paper, but in reality, it can cause games to become spread too thin in order to account for multiple playstyles. Sometimes developers just need to explicitly say, this is a game about action, or this is a game about stealth, and spend all their time and development resources fine-tuning that aspect. Imagine if Doom had a stealth mechanic. You'd think id Software had gone completely insane. That's kind of how I feel about Mafia 3. Lincoln is a tank, a powerhouse that can bulldoze any obstacle in his way. So why would he need to tiptoe around his adversaries like this? Let's say you don't want to remove the stealth. How could they have changed the play conditioning to encourage a more fun approach? Well, firstly, I would have made stealth impossible in the second half of the Haitian base assault. Have it so that enemies always know where you are, and if you don't press forward, have more spawns so that you can't just camp in one spot and have everyone come to you. Design the first real mission around combat. Have enemies in clusters so that it's impossible to stealth kill them, and maybe change the circumstances around the base to make a frontal assault more reasonable, or maybe even encouraged. Don't make it a rescue mission, and don't have it take place in a public venue. You can have all those things for later missions, but in the beginning, showcasing Mafia 3's strengths should be the priority, and stealth is not one of the game's strengths. If you want my advice on how to have fun with Mafia 3, play along with the tutorial, but as soon as you speak with Cassandra, all bets are off. Set the difficulty to easy, set the aim assist to high, and approach every encounter like a cheesy action hero. You'll have a great time. Informants and other important NPCs can't be killed in regular combat, so there is literally no downside to just gunning down any rival gang member in your way. And if you ever find yourself in my position where a game seems boring but you know that there's something keeping you invested, try changing up your playstyle. You might just find a new favorite game in the process. And that is it for this video. I know it's not usually what I upload, so thank you to everyone who stuck around until the end. And don't worry, this isn't the kind of content I will be focusing on from now on. This was just a fun little experiment. I'd like to thank my patrons, Orion Train, Quincy Chamberlain, Lars Espen, Data52, Jaman5, and Savos2342. If you'd like to join these wonderful people or the fine folks on the Discord server, you can do so via links in the description. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.